I'm very glad to see you, and thank you so much for coming today. And for coming out on this very cold day. It's been a while that I've actually spoken in front of a microphone. I'm used to singing on Sundays without a microphone, but this is absolutely wonderful to have. So I don't have to use my voice in the same way that I have to use it without a microphone, which the story is very much about the actual power of the voice and how the voice is ensconced in this family dynasty throughout their body personal, and their body as far as it extends to government and nations, and how we think of the body as a piece of orchestration. So I'd like to thank Margie Russell for presenting this. NYARM, fabulous. She did a fabulous job of setting this up and having this catered. And I'd like to also thank the General Society of Mechanics and Tradesmen for extending the space to us today, because this is the perfect space in terms of its historical demeanor, its character, and there couldn't be a better space to actually open this section of the story. Probably some of you saw the trailer, some of you haven't, and if you haven't, I'd love to send it to you afterwards. The story that we put out in Composers Now is based on the idea of music and tools. And I don't want to tell you too much about what that means, music and tools, because the violin itself and the story here and the panel will be discussing how these tools actually emerge from the characters and how they tabulate and calculate data and information. So the story is a very historical story that goes way back in time. And one of the fundamental precepts of it is that the whole idea of our digital machinery is first and foremost in our feet, our hands, and our voice. And how did we get to now at this point in time? That's a question actually that's pondered, although I don't think these children know the word pondered at the point at which we bring them in. But they are many generations into the story, so I'm going to open it up. So it's as if I'm telling the story about your grandparents, your great-grandparents, and some of you, your great-great-grandparents. It takes in quite a few generations. And in this day and age, we are now living in the moment of many generations. So I felt it was very important to tell a story about memory as it proceeds through many generations, and how we have very different ideas of what comprehension is and what meaning of word means. At the point at which I'm going to bring you in, these two children have been kidnapped. They grew up in a French home. In that French home, they hear German, they hear Russian. They're kidnapped, they come to the United States, and I don't want to give away too much of the plot, but there's a thrilling section to it here. It opens up on Fifth Avenue in the mid-1950s, this section of it. The children have just heard their mother's voice on radio in a real performance of the opera Susanna by Carlisle Floyd, who is an opera composer. And Susanna actually is an opera that's very well done these days, very heard all over the place. And I actually wrote this for this woman who premiered this live at that time. I wanted to have an homage to her voice because it had to do very much with what her voice did for me in my life to open this idea of memory and where sound comes from. I was 19 when I met her. She's still alive. I'll tell you later who she is. We open with another section of hers. So the children have moved from the room where they hear her on radio. She is their god, their goddess. It's a little boy, a little girl. And they can't understand her, but they do understand her because they have been removed from her, and they're not understanding why these radio signals are actually in their ears. Same time, I bring you out into the street. Next scene, their father is circling around them in the car, and they're hearing typical 1950s, 60s music, Transistor, Cousin Brucey. And at that point, I stop the frame and bring in this Mozart C minor Mass, this Et incarnatus est, because I wanted people to understand that the section they're going to hear now is how the children replace their unconscious idea of her, meaning she's left them. They can't comprehend why exactly. But, you know, they were taken from her at the point at which they were beginning to form words. So in the violin that you will hear, and in this scene, is basically a conversation that you see in their feet. We're coming to hip-hop, we're coming to totally new forms of music, and how they take her voice with them. They get into a lot of trouble in their lives as they grow up, and they transmit this whole business of her voice because the family has a family business. And the idea is they have a store, and the store keeps moving with them in a compass that has a relationship to how they feel, whether their hunger is being quelled or not. And from that, I'll actually bring you into the scene here, and then we'll talk a little bit more about their conversation and how this need to talk and the need to be, the idea of thirst and of hunger comes from language and motor capability and the comprehension to actually excel. The girl's voice changes differently from the boy's voice, and his voice, obviously, they're coming to puberty, has to do with when his voice is going to change and go down, and her voice is going to go up. Right? So you have this whole motion of their voices that forms a compass between them, north, south, east, west. This compass is always with them. Later in their lives, they're separated. And at that point, it's past World War II and well into this century. And the voices have to find each other to solve a terrible thing that has happened in their family, a murder, and something that affects many countries in a big political way. This is a slice of a major epic that covers five small books, and you'll see the piece that we're going to open with now. Thank you.